introduce myself. My name is Wanda Afrilia Garini from Class 4C, Department of English Education, Syarif Hidayatullah State Islamic University of Jakarta, with student ID 063. I made this video to fulfill an assignment from Miss Mida Husna in the extensive reading course. I will retell the novel I have read entitled Pete's Dragon Lost Years by Elizabeth Rudnick, which was released in 2016 with 263 pages. The novel starts with a family going on a trip through the mountains. Little Pete is reading a book about a puppy named Elliot. A deer runs into the road and causes Pete's dad to swerve the car, causing an accident that kills Pete's parents. Pete wanders out of the car and into the woods all alone. Pete's parents are killed instantly, but Pete survives. He ends up being chased into the forest by a pack of wolves and becomes surrounded. But then the wolves are scared off by the presence of a house dragon with green fur and yellow eyes. Pete is at first a little scared, but comes to see that the dragon is very friendly. Pete names him Elliot, after the character in his favorite book, and the two of them become the best of friends, spending the next 6 years living together in the forest. One day, Pete, now 10 years old, spotted a group of lumberjacks and forest rangers roaming close to where he lives. He stays out of sight, but gets spotted and followed by a girl named Natalie McGarry, the daughter of site foreman Jack McGarry. When Natalie tries to follow him up a tree and hurts herself, her father, Jack, and his fiancée forest ranger, Grace McCann, come looking for her. When they notice Pete, he runs off and to be caught by Jack's brother Gavin. And they take him back to the town. And when Elliot realizes that Pete is missing, he gets worried and starts looking for him. But at the same time, catches Gavin's attention. He and his fellow lumberjacks arm themselves with rifles and venture deep into the forest. Meanwhile, Pete is taken to hospital after bumping his head while trying to escape. He escapes from the hospital and tries to get back to the forest, but is unfamiliar with his new surroundings. Grace and the police give chase and shortly capture him after he is cornered in an alleyway. Grace, Natalie, and Jack invite Pete to stay with them, promising to take him back to the woods the next day and have Pete show where he had been living for 6 years. When Pete begins talking about his friend Elliot, Grace begins to wonder. When she was a little girl, her father used to tell her stories about a dragon in the forest. While he said they were true, Grace never really believed them as she got older. But everything that Pete has said and shown about Elliot is exactly what was described in her father's stories. Back in the woods, Gavin and his followers are still roaming the woods, and by now it has gotten dark. When they discover discover Pete and Elliot's tree house, Elliot comes out and hiding and chases them away. Then he takes to the skies and follows them back to town in hopes of finding Pete. Elliot follows Gavin and his colleagues to Jake's house, who tells him what he saw but doesn't believe him. When Elliot finds Pete and sees how happy and well treated he is, he sadly decides to leave him and returns to his cave. The next day, Pete, Grace, and Natalie, along with Grace's father, Mr. McCann, journey to the forest. Upon arrival, they follow Pete to his tree house, where he introduced them to Elliot. They are both startled but amazed by what they are seeing. Natalie even gets close to hitting him on the nose. Suddenly, Elliot is tranquilized multiple times by Gavin and his fellow lumberjacks. Elliot tries to escape, but the tranquilizers take their effect on him, and instantly falls unconscious. They load Elliot onto a truck and bring him back to the mill, where they lock him in a warehouse. Pete is worried about what might happen to Elliot and needs to save him. With Natalie's assistance, the kids get inside the warehouse unnoticed and remove the chains that are holding Elliot. Although free from his restraints, Elliot still feels a little weak and unable to fly out. With Mr. McCann's help, they drive Elliot out of the mill and back to the forest, pursued by the police. Gavin gets ahead of them and tries to make them stop at the bridge, but they are unable to and run right into Gavin's pickup and come to a stop on the other side. Elliot, with his strength regained, angrily attacked the police force by breathing fire at them. Pete tries to get him to calm, but Elliot doesn't listen and continues breathing fire. Jack and Grace end up halfway across the bridge, and the enormous amount of fire causes damage to the bridge. The road beneath them give way, and their pickup ends hanging dangerously over the ravine beneath the bridge. Grace and Jack are trapped and inches away from death, but when Pete finally gets through to Elliot that he needs Grace and Jack, he finally calms down and moves in to save them. Gavin races to the back of the truck to try to save them, but suddenly the damaged bridge completely gives way, causing Elliot, Grace, and Jack to fall into the misty ravine. Just when everyone expects the worst, Elliot emerges from the mist with Grace and Jack riding on his back. They are all happily rented, but as helicopters approach, Pete and Elliot fly away despite Grace's plea. Pete and Elliot return to their now demolished tree house. Now that everyone knows of Elliot's existence, he will have to go far away. This also means that Pete will have to leave his friend for good. even though he doesn't want to. Elliot, knowing that Grace, Jack, and Natalie can love and care for Pete as much as he has, encouraged him to go back to them. The two friends give each other one last tearful hug before going their separate ways. Pete returns to live with Grace, Jack, and Natalie, and Elliot flies away to find a new home. Afterwards, Elliot's existence slowly fades from the town's memory. Gavin has learned to be more scrupulous and has moved on from the experience. Grace and Jack get married and adopt Pete. And as for Elliot, he is not seen or heard from again. But if one knows where to look like Pete, Elliot can be found living among many other dragons. And I think it's enough for me to retell the novel by Elizabeth Rudnick. I hope that those of you who watch my video from beginning to end can take lessons from this novel that I read out. Thank you and goodbye. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.